40 years of doing this, I have never fielded a complaint from somebody after a claim that said they had too much coverage.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
All right, welcome everybody in the Insurance Syndicate group. It is another day, it's another week, and we are coming at you live again from Ask the Experts. It's January 23rd, it's 10:30 a.m., and we have a very, very special guest that's going to be on here today. We have Stan Tebow. For over 40 years, Stan has been a pillar of extraordinary service dedicated to providing proper protection, delivering on the very promise that insurance represents. His remarkable commitment has led to some remarkable recognition and achievements, as Stan has been recognized nationally a staggering 74 times. That's not a 7, but 74 times award winner, is a testament to his dedication and expertise. And if that wasn't impressive enough, he holds the distinct honor of being the only member in the All-State Hall of Fame in the entire state of Alaska. But Stan's life isn't just about his professional achievements. He's a man of adventure, passion. Along with his wife, Judy, he loves exploring the world in international travel. When they're not jet setting, they're enjoying their time with their grandkids and their 2 English bulldogs. And if you're looking for him in the Alaskan wilderness, you might just find him pursuing his passion. Stan has also just finished writing a book called 2 Guys Hunting. This guy does it all, and I have no doubt he's going to be a wealth of knowledge on the show. Stan, welcome to the show, my friend. Pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of where I want to start things was really interesting topic you brought up before we got on the call here is just really the commoditization of the insurance industry, right? I think we see that a lot more times than not. We're taking this transactional approach, this price first approach with a lot of big insurance carriers out there. And we're even seeing agencies kind of go to that too, because I think it's the easy path and the path of least resistance. If you don't have a tight operation with training procedures where you're really coming in there and doing things different, it's real easy to fall into that mousetrap of that, kind of average cookie cutter approach, being transactional, selling on price. And I'd like to just have a little bit of dialogue on that, your perspective on that and how you do things differently in your agency.
Well, it's an interesting thing that we've allowed this, right? And as you pointed out, some agencies pursue the easy conversation, and that's the price point, and we hear it in all the advertising and everything else. But and one of my favorite phrases I've been using lately is, in 40 years of doing this, I have never fielded a complaint from somebody after a claim that said they had too much coverage.
Yep.
It's always been about not having enough, for one reason or another, right? Whether they chose the wrong coverage, the agent maybe didn't do enough investigation in the conversation to generate the need for additional coverage and so forth. So it's never about, oh, I had too much coverage, when the rubber meets the road and the promise is delivered. It's always about, do we have enough?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely. And I think it's all about getting the team with the right knowledge, so they feel comfortable and confident that they're on the call, that they can truly lean in and being that, that trusted advisor, that true expert that comes onto the call there. And I think it's important too to get the customer to see that, because I think the biggest advantage out there is the fact that the industry is commoditized, is the fact that everybody is kind of taking that path of least resistance. And if you can come out there and really differentiate yourself, but then emphasize that to the customer to get them to see that, well, it's like you don't have competition anymore, because you're operating in a realm that not many people are operating to. And I know that's the way we always operated our insurance agency, and how we continue to operate until this day, and getting the customer to realize, hey, would you feel comfortable walking into your doctor's office and you're having chest pains, you're having some sort of symptoms, and you walk in, they ask you no questions, and then they hand you a prescription and a bottle of pills. You'd walk out of that doctor's office faster than you walked in, right? Well, that's the same thing in the insurance business. If they don't ask you the right qualifying questions, they don't ask you about your assets, they don't ask you about your family, they don't ask you what you're really looking to protect, and then they're just giving you a number. or they're cutting your coverages or matching your coverages to some arbitrary number that, got pulled out of the sky. Well, really, it's the exact same thing that's happening there. And I think if you get the customer to see that and then you show up differently, in my opinion, I think that's where, you can start seeing some game-changing results inside of your operation.
I agree, and I disagree with part of that, Dave. I think that you're right from a standpoint if you can get a client to understand that. But I do believe that most clients walk into a doctor's office thinking there's something wrong with them and that they need to have help and they're looking for that advice. Most consumers today are not walking into an insurance office knowing that they need additional coverage because
absolutely,
they might injure somebody and cripple them for life. And or do they believe they're going to because that happens to other people, right? Nothing other happens until it does, right?
So, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's the huge difference there. The people they view insurance as a necessary evil, and they want to get it as cheap as they can without understanding the ramifications of the cheap policy versus the proper coverage.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, again, the opportunity to get in there and kind of educate them and show them. And the best way I've always found to do that is, sharing stories with them that basically open up their eyes that they're not as invincible as they think they are. Right. It's like, hey, you know what? The whole reason to have insurance is to be protected from the unexpected. Hey, Mr. Customer, you've, spent 30 years building your life. The last thing you want to have happen is the unexpected happen and have all of that at risk and all of that at jeopardy. And you might think, hey, I'm a phenomenal driver. Things don't happen to me. But if you open up your own newspaper, the local news, it's happening around you in your own community every single day. And there's situations that are outside the realm of your control. And what we would always like to do, get on the call, like, hey, I'd like to share a story with you. We had a client once that was backing their SUV out of the driveway and, freak accident in a blind spot. Little kid was driving their bike around there, hit the child. Luckily, the child survived. But how much do you think they got sued for? Well, they got sued for, $1.2 million. And luckily, they had an umbrella policy in place and they were protected. But then I'll tell you another less fortunate story. Freak accident, guy mowing the lawn. You know how fast a lawnmower blade goes. Ricochets a rock into the neighboring lawn, at a pretty accelerated rate. And there's a child in the yard, children in the yard that are playing, strikes a little kid on impact in the temple, and just total freak accident. And it was a fatal accident. And the last thing that you want to have to worry about during dealing with some trauma like that is having, your financial future in jeopardy. But like, what do you think that family sued for? That family sued for over $2 million, and they didn't have the right coverage there, and they ended up awarding in their favor and garnished their wages for probably a number of years there. And and I think it's really taking those real life situations that happen and opening the eyes of the consumer and saying, hey, this is what it's for. And even if you got to maybe go with a higher deductible in order to get the higher coverage, you take on the smaller let us take on the bigger risk. So your family and all your assets are protected the right way from the unexpected like that.
Yeah, I teach that also, Dave, selling with sensational stories, because that is something people can identify with. There's an echo now. Is that me or you? I guess it's me.
I think it might be on your end.
Okay. And our mission statement for my 40-year career has been to have real world conversations with people about the risks they face every day and help them protect what matters most to them. And that's part of that real world conversation. If we can bring our stories into it, and of course, I've been around long enough now, I've had clients that have done pretty much everything, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And we can relate those stories. And I teach my staff that you don't have to experience it yourself. You can simply say one of our clients, 10 years ago, or one of our clients that Stan knows or whatever, has had this happen. And, how would you like it to turn out for you if it happened to you? That kind of a conversation. So we teach conversations. I knew an agent once that had an egg timer on their staff's desk, and they wanted them off the call every 3 minutes. I teach talk time. I want if it takes 45 minutes for you to handle a client's situation, whether it be new business or whether it be a service thing, and you're reviewing all the coverages when they're on the phone, take 45 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you invest that time the right way, and again, you do it right, your close rate's going to be exponentially higher. And as we know, with Allstate and many carriers like that, we're not always the lowest price. As a matter of fact, more times than not, you're not the lowest price. So what is the value proposition that you're going to bring to the table at the end of the day that's going to stop you from churning and burning, which, I would argue morally, ethically is the wrong thing to do, because it's only a matter of time. This is a numbers game at the end of the day. And if you just keep giving everybody a blanket set of coverage, there's eventually going to be somebody in that pool that gives you a call one day that has that unexpected happening because you didn't do the right due diligence. Their family's in jeopardy and at risk. And I think it's our duty, it's our obligation as insurance agents that are out there to go out and do that right thing as a professional, to at least put your best foot forward, educating the client to make sure they have that, that right level of protection they needed the most. And one of the things that I love to do there too, and I know you're a big sales guy, you're a big sales trainer, Stan, and is frame them in that ideal avatar, because we all know that people have difficulty making basic decisions, right? We think about the last time that we talked about with our significant other, our spouse, to go out to dinner. What did that look like? Hey, honey, where do you want to go? I don't care where you want to go. And you go back and forth, ping pong ball, just pick a place, right? But if you walked up to her and said, hey, you know what? I know, your favorite chef is XYZ. He's going to be in town today, and actually going to be preparing your favorite meal. And it's going to be at this restaurant that's real easy up the street. And I booked us reservations there. And then they're going to have your favorite dessert that's going to come out after. And the ambiance is phenomenal. We're going to be there at 7:30, or we could go there at 8:30. Which would you prefer? That's a much different conversation. And I think that's what people need, is they need to, understand what they want and present them with options to make it easy and make it simple. But the client and the consumer doesn't know what they don't know. So it's our job to come in. And one of the things that, we like to do, especially when, price is a big factor and we're not always competitive on price, is say, hey, you know what? I want to congratulate you. And the customer's like, well, what do you mean? Well, you actually have higher than normal limits. I don't know yet if those are the right limits for you, but you have higher than normal limits. What that tells me about you is you're somebody that prioritizes the most important thing in your life. That price isn't the most important thing, that your family and protecting your assets is the most important thing. Am I safe in that assumption? And then they're going to agree with you. And it's like, not that the other people out there that I work with, they're bad people at all, but they just don't get it. But you get it. And I love working with people like you that put their family first. So now what you just did is you casted them in a frame of the avatar of the ideal client that you want. That the client, what they should be doing is putting their family first, protecting their asset first. And it makes it a lot more difficult later on in the conversation to, hey, I'm really only worried about price and I want to cut my coverages and doing that, because you already put them into that avatar where they got agreement with you.
Yeah, well, a couple things about price. If you stop and think about actuarial science, right? All of us over the course of our 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is of having insurance, maybe 100 years. My dad's 90, he's still driving.
Yep.
All of us are going to pay about the same price because science dictates that, right? If that was not the case, then companies wouldn't be doing this on the price scale, ahead for a while, behind for a while, and that sort of thing. And one of them would be out of business because they were constantly the cheapest. Well, that's like, I love one of the current carriers out there's advertising, will only pay for what you need, making it sound like it's going to be less expensive. But the reality is they're going to need pretty much the same price product that they're paying now at any other company, right? Because actuarial science dictates that. With computer modeling and that sort of thing, now we know how many accidents are going to happen every 100,000 miles driven in pretty much every zip code in the country.
100%.
And so all of this price conversation, quite frankly, is posturing just to try and get business out in the door. And hopefully some of it will stick and they won't jump to someplace else because of price next week, right? And that's accomplished by those conversations you were just talking about, Dave, by educating people so that they understand what they have and why it's important.
Yeah, and I'd like to walk through, what does that typically look like in your operation? You got the consumer there. Hey, you get to the point where you got the coverages, the methodology in which you're educating them to kind of lead them to, to getting their eyes wide open to make better decisions.
We try and start with stories. Of course, Alaska, the driving conditions, a lot of times it's a game of whose lane is it anyway.
Oh yeah.
For about 6 months out of the year. Now this year is kind of an exception, but a lot of snow, a lot of ice, a lot of things that are covered up. I mean, the snow gets deep enough the stop signs even get covered upon occasion. Last year they set a record for the fastest number of days to 100 inches of snow. Just in Anchorage. So, I mean, it's a different kind of environment. So it's easy to tell stories about accidents that happen because they happen all the time.
Mhm.
And so we engage people's mind, hey, have you ever driven down this road in a snowy day? And perhaps the car driving next to you didn't have their lights on and you sideswiped them and they got ejected because they didn't have their seatbelt on. Yeah, it's illegal to not wear a seatbelt, but quite frankly, you're still the cause of the accident. You're still responsible for the injuries.
Yep.
And so those types of conversations, and then we do the asset-based conversation as well. Okay, what have you got to lose? Right? I mean, it's not just,
and because they don't know what they don't know, and they're not used to being asked those questions. And I think that's the key point that we're hitting on here today. They're not used to being asked those questions, and if you can come in and position yourself as that expert, get them to realize that, hey, what I'd like to do for you today is ask you a few questions to determine the right limits for you that you probably haven't been asked before. And I'm going to ask you at the end of this, you tell me if anybody's ever gone through this with you. And what this does is just really separates you apart. If you had to put a dollar value on protecting your home based off the equity you have in it, what would that look like? Okay, $500,000. If you had to look at your retirement accounts, your assets, your 401k, everything that you have there, what would be a number you'd be comfortable with? Okay, another $300,000. And if I had to give you a fund for some additional coverage because you don't have to be a millionaire to get sued like a millionaire. They can come after you, garnish your wages. What is some, additional protection that you'd want to do? Would a couple $100,000 be, safe to say for that? Okay. Well, it's based off of what you're telling me. Oh my gosh, you have $100,000 limits and you really need $1 million limits. But what I found is when you're having those conversations and, obviously it goes deeper than that just for brevity's sake, I'm, going through it. But now if they're paying $200 a month and your price comes up at $250, but you're giving them $1 million worth of coverage, now you can break it down. But like, hey, I get it. Yeah, we're more expensive, but we're really not. Because if you actually do the math and you look at what you're paying per $50,000 of liability coverage, it's $100 per $50,000 increment of liability coverage. But if you do the math of me getting you the right coverage incrementally per $50,000 of liability coverage on $1 million, you're looking at $12.50 per $50,000 increment of coverage.
So how do we convince other agencies to adopt this educational approach? Because darn good and well, there are people out there that are rising to the company's upper levels of sales by doing it cheap.
Yep.
And they're being rewarded. So the incentive to stop and back up and do it the way we're talking about isn't there. The company has not supported that kind of a model. They've supported the other kind of model to help shareholders or their growth, their policies in force or whatever. And so how do we get all the agents to buy into that? And that's a tough sell. I mean, I know a guy, I've actually reported him a couple of times now for falsification of application, and the company just shrugs it off.
Oh yeah,
it's illegal.
I think about it, it's not maybe the easiest answer out there, but I think it's getting them to see that, I think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think you can do the right thing for the customer. You can educate, get them the right level of coverages while you're positively impacting your bottom line. Because, what I've found time and time again, and it's a skillful conversation, right? So it doesn't take a lot of skill to be transactional, be a data collector, and then give a price. What it does take some skill to is to navigate the conversation, to know the psychology of sales, and then get in there and how to educate and be that true trusted advisor. But once you learn how to do that, it's a skill set that you don't lose. But I believe that you're rapidly increasing your close rate because now you can have that conversation again to that comparison. Be like, listen, I get it. Yeah, we're more overall money. But if you look at the incremental cost per $50,000 increment of coverage, we're substantially less. And I'd like to compare this analogy. Imagine you're driving a Kia, you're paying $200 a month, but I come up to you and I say, hey, you know what? We're doing this crazy thing right now. It's normally $2,000 a month for a Lamborghini Aventador, but for $50 more a month, I can trade in that Kia and give you a brand new Lamborghini. How many would do that? Everybody's going to put up their hand. Well, would you agree with me that, protecting your family, protecting your future and your finances, everything you built for the past 30 years is more important than the car. Well,
Well,
I know the right thing to do is, pay the money here. And I
Sure.
get it. Everybody's on a budget. Everybody's trying to save money, but think outside the box. Where else can you find that money for the customer and be that asset above and beyond maybe even insurance? What I would like to do is, and I genuinely always would offer this to people, let's find the money and the savings somewhere else that's not the important, the safety blanket to protect you and your family. Well, what do I mean by that? I guarantee you, if you and I sit down, which I'm willing to do on Zoom with you, let's go through your bills. I bet you there's probably an extra Netflix subscription. I bet you you're overpaying on your cell phone bill. I bet you you're overpaying on your internet. And that $50 a month that you're saving, you could probably find $150 a month in these excess bills that you're paying that are not meant to protect you and your family. But why don't we take care of the most important thing today, find the savings after the call, other places where it's less important, and then allow you to rest your head in your pillow tonight? Because I know earlier in the call, you expressed that, the most important thing to you is your coverage. And, I admire that. And I want to help you meet those goals by the end of the call today and make sure that you get off with the right level of coverage that you protect and deserve with. And, I think another piece there too is when you start to get those objections, well, I got to go get another quote. Well, it's like when you took that position and somebody's saying, I got to continue to shop around, which is one of the most common objections. But if you took the position as the advisor, went in with the analogy of asking the questions and then confirmed afterwards, I'm willing to bet nobody's asked you these questions before. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, they haven't. Well, it's like, okay, you've been buying insurance for 30 years. And I know you want to go get a quote out there, but what do you think the odds are statistically that you're going to get some random stranger or two on the phone that's going to do a better job than I did today asking the right questions when you just told me over the past 30 years, nobody's ever asked those questions to you? So if we looked at that from a sheer statistic standpoint, and I know it's very rare. It's going to be about the odds of winning the lottery that's going to happen. But I'm going to tell you what's really going to happen. Your life is busy. My life is busy. We're going to forget about this conversation. We're not going to ever do the right thing and put the right coverages in place. And then there's going to be one day, and I hope it doesn't happen to you, but it happens around us every time, that the unexpected happens. And you want to have the right coverage in place and rest your head in your pillow tonight, knowing that's the case, or kick the can and test your luck for a little bit longer down the road. And then that's what's different about me being your advisor to come in. You get me in your back pocket to be your advocate that's going to look out for you and your financial future. And to me, if I'm a professional, and I know you speak the same language, somebody's talking to me that way, and I know they care about me, and I know they're invested in me, and they're convicted about that, and they educated me on it. Well, I'm going to do business with that person regardless of price. And you're not going to get everybody, but I think it's feasible that you could double your close rate with that methodology. But now once you start to understand that, hey, by putting in the work and getting good at this, I can double my close rate and get twice the amount of customers. Well, now we're cooking with sauce, right?
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir here, of course. I built my entire career based on, value selling and providing the proper coverage, which is, why I go back to the whole, thing about that. I've never had a complaint after a claim about somebody who's had too much coverage. It's always been about not enough. And and most of the time that's from somebody coming from another office, not from mine. Not saying that it hasn't happened, but it traditionally doesn't happen.
Oh no, so absolutely.
And so, getting the clients to believe this when you have the ability to have these types of conversations really isn't all that hard. But again, them taking the time to come to your office or to do it over Zoom or do it over the phone with you when they have the preconceived idea that they can save 15% by taking 15 minutes, to coin an advertising phrase I've heard. I always counter back with, well, gee, Dave, isn't, your financial future more important than 15 minutes of your time? And I like to tell people, you go to a doctor and you look at them as an advisor for your health. The second most important advisor you have, aside maybe from your spiritual advisor, should be us. Because we protect your financial future, and your finances seem to be at the very front of your mind because you're concerned about the price of this. But let's stop and think about what happens if you don't pay the price for proper coverage, and you have to pay the price on the other end.
Oh, without a doubt. And which, by the way, one feeds into the other. Like if you get that financial detriment and impact, that can actually go back and impact your health too. So I mean, it's
Oh, yeah,
something
that's
that's
true too.
incredibly important. And I know, again, as we talked about this earlier in the call, I think one of the biggest challenges out there, it's like it takes work, right? You're putting in a lot more effort. Like it takes work to do this. It takes work on the owner's behalf to train their team. And I know you're a master at it. Again, just like you said, preaching to the choir. Like you're somebody that does the right thing every time, every call, and your team is doing the same thing too. And I'd be curious what your training methodology looks like to take the wisdom of Stan Tebow and then instilling that into a new team member when you hire somebody in to get them to do the right thing. And I guess the follow-up question that would be is how do you inspect what you expect if they're falling in misalignment with your expectations,
Sure.
on a typical sales call?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the last question first. We actually operate on EOS, so we have a system of scorecards. And for those who don't know, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's been around for a while now, and a lot of people are using it. But the scorecards are pretty simple because they're not emotional. You can just look at it and say, "Hey, Andy, you know what? Your scorecard's red this week. What can I do to help you get it to turn green?" Right? That's a pretty simple conversation. Your activities are this, you're doing that, your close rates this, and you have those conversations. So we do those weekly. We talk to people about their scorecard. So that's how we stay on track. The training part of it, we developed. My manager Hunter is a terrific trainer. In fact, he went to school to become a teacher, and so in our situation, he's a much better teacher than I am, quite frankly. I've instilled the values, I set up the ideas and so forth as a visionary, but he actually is the one that does the nuts and bolts training. But we filmed um, multiple videos and have a playbook online that's accessible to our staff, and they are required to go through a 90-day boot camp with that material. So it's not just, okay, gee, you're hired, boom, here's a phone, and start calling people. We have a 90-day boot camp. Doesn't mean that they're not talking to clients, but it's part of the training. They go through, we listen to phone calls, we coach, we go back to the videos that Hunter and I have done for training, and instill a lot of repetition so that they get it right. Because just like everybody else, the first time I did it, I was lousy at it. Oh yeah, if you've done it a million times, guess what? You get better. And
first time my little boy went to walk, he wasn't very good at it, but he's walking, running around right now because he just kept getting up.
Yeah, so we take the training part very seriously, and I will say that I didn't used to always be that way. That's a kind of a renaissance that happened in my career at about 30 years in, maybe 27, 28 years in, because I was big on having people just, okay, if you're worth your salt, you got to go out and find the answers to these things yourself, and you're going to, because there's all kinds of resources available, and to demonstrate to me that you're worthy of working here, you need to be able to do that. Well, and I had some success that way. I mean, I won, honor ring 25, 30 times, whatever it was, and
just a couple times, right?
but the change happened. I was at a mastermind actually at Janelle Delgado's house. I don't know if you know who she is. I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I was at a mastermind in Denver at her place that we'd paid some good money for. And my buddy Greg Gray looks at me. He says, "Stan," he says, "after listening to you," he said, "I think maybe the problem is you." Well, that was a little bit hard to take. But here's a guy that I love and respect greatly, and he's listening to what I just said, and maybe I should think about that just a little bit. So I've gone through an entire renaissance professionally since that day, and back to reading, back to training, back to having meaningful conversations, not just with my clients, but with my staff. And that's made a huge difference in the core value, adherence in our policies, our turnover. I think our team is probably closer knit now than it's ever been. And I'm looking forward to some great things in 2025 because of that. But it's been an interesting renaissance.
Oh, absolutely. And I absolutely love that. And some of the things to unpack and break down there, one of the things, the key words that I heard from it, I like, 'cause I love the EOS model, visionary and creative, And then, you clearly have a great integrator inside your operation, and I think that's important for the businesses that are big enough to be able to do that, you're really leaning into where your skill sets lie. So if that, isn't in the cards for you, you're not the greatest at that, and you have the ability to do so, hire somebody in, because it's probably one of the most important roles that you have there, is having that executor that can come in with some of these, important initiatives, especially like training. I mean, because I think the worst thing that you could have, rather than having, somebody that's trained doing all the right things, is an untrained person inside your operation that's doing a disservice to your clients in any business model. And I think if you're the one that doesn't have the luxury and to maybe hire that person on now, it's like you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to get good at it. You got to get good at it just enough to be dangerous until you can go through that growth mode like you did, and get enough growth and revenue where you can start to make those investments later on in your business.
Well, you don't have to do it by yourself either, because there are fractional integrators, fractional visionaries, and stuff available out there now that you can tap into pools of people with different knowledge. In addition to all of this other change, I spent a couple of years in the last few studying under Grant Cardone and became a 10X certified business coach. And it's not that I'm probably going to do a lot with that, but the education I got was incredible. Rubbing elbows with him and Brandon Dawson, probably one of the smartest guys around when it comes to business. I learned a lot from them that I'm trying to apply now going forward. I've been in this business a long time, but it's changed. I need to change too, right? And
no, absolutely, it's ever evolving, right? I mean, you got to keep up with the flow. And I'd be curious, being a coach as well, and you obviously worked with other agents and worked with other business owners. When you really break down some of the, again, I say this all the time: success leaves clues, and then failures leave clues at the same time. When you're working with people, what do you see the single biggest thing that's getting in the way for most people of reaching their full potential inside of their operation and in their business?
Themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many different aspects. I mean, that's kind of a broad question and can be painted with a broad brush. But people primarily, especially artisans, and talk about different businesses. Okay. The guy that's a good body shop, he can spray paint. He's an artist at repairing a car, decides that he doesn't want to work for the man anymore. He wants to be the boss. So he goes out and starts a body shop and fails miserably at it. It's one of the reasons that businesses fail at such a rapid rate. HVAC, guy that's really, really good at putting in furnaces, decides he wants to own a company. So he starts his company and he fails at it. It's the lack of understanding the amount of time, energy, money, and resources it takes, and underestimating that by a great deal. Because the visionaries tend to be really good at chasing shiny objects.
Oh yeah,
we are really lousy at looking at the second, third, and fourth order consequences of the decisions that we make. Yep. And so that is probably the biggest thing that I found in coaching other businesses and business owners is that whole get focused on the shiny thing. I want to chase that. Yes, it's a great idea, and then not having anybody to bounce those ideas off of that can shed some real light in it. In fact, we're forming a visionary forum here in the Pacific Northwest just to help businesses with that in mind.
No, I love that. And I guess on the flip side of it, right? So you got the commonalities amongst the ones that are struggling, but the ones that you see, being a mega agent and rubbing shoulders with other successful people out there, maybe even coaching other successful agents that have, reached that place, but they're just trying to take it to the next level. What do you see as a commonality between those folks, as to, I guess, the pathway to success for them, is that, again, that commonality amongst most of them?
Well, drive, I think, has a lot to do with it. I mean, you just can't get there. You don't go out for a casual walk and end up on top of Mount McKinley, right?
No.
It just doesn't happen, in your afternoon dog walking session. It takes preparation, it takes drive, it takes determination, training. All of those things are encompassed into people that are successful every time. You don't
Absolutely.
find people at the top of the pile that haven't worked their way there, right? And so that's one of the commonalities, I think. But the probably the focus on the important stuff
Yep.
and letting the stuff that's not so important go. The other part of it, I think, is being in the right rooms with the right people. If
Yep.
if you're hanging with people that want to see you succeed, that want to help you, and you help them, hence the reason for this forum I talked about, then you're going to propel and help motivate each other to the top. And I've hung with some people that are super successful. Like the Brandon Dawson, Grant Cardone, and I know Andy has had some experience with those guys too. And they're nice. They want to
Oh, yeah.
help people. They absolutely want to help people. This stigma that, oh well, these rich guys, they got lucky and they don't want to talk to anybody beneath them is garbage. I mean,
Oh, no,
I
absolutely.
I sat in a room in a forum that I went to in Florida, and the guy I was sitting next to exited his last business at $158 million. And he is there for additional training because now he wants to start this company on robotics and has this idea, and he thinks he's going to benefit from the knowledge of people in the room. So it's the collective energy that comes from being in groups like that help people and keep them at the top and propel others to the top, I think.
No, absolutely. And a couple things to unpack there. What I heard is, keep the main thing the main thing. I think too many people will go out there and what they do is they don't even realize, sometimes it's subconscious, but they drift into the lane that's most comfortable, right? You might have came in, hey, I started an insurance agency and I never had to be a leader before. I never had to. So instead of actually stepping into leadership and getting uncomfortable and learning how to be an effective leader, it's like they're their own best customer service rep or their own best sales rep, while they're working on this one thing, the rest of everything is like burning down. Or we'll see somebody in there that they're just so, caught up into the fire hose hitting them. Well, I got like 30 different things to worry about, so I can never get ahead. Right. And it's always that same story. But if it's like, no, hey, you know what? If I got limited time and there's only two things that I can do, I'm going to focus on the customer experience, doing what's right for my customer, and revenue. And just learning how to keep that main thing and falling in love with what is most difficult now until you can hire out that responsibility, that responsibility later. And absolutely agree, being around the right people there too. And I think that's another place of discomfort from people, because what do is they hang around the same old people that they've always hung around with, having the same old conversations, and a lot of times seeking validation for maybe those limiting beliefs, because somewhere deep down it feels good to be validated. Oh yeah, it's just a tough environment. Well, I'm a believer in tough times. There's the most amount of opportunities if you can lean into those tough times when everybody else is kind of reserved. And it takes hanging around the right people that are winning during tough times, like yourself.
Yeah, and it really hasn't changed over the course of history, right?
No, it's been simple, basic fundamentals that have always been here.
Right? and we have to keep relearning it for some reason. I don't know what that is, but writing this book was certainly a jump outside of my comfort zone. And the idea, well, who would want to listen to a crusty old fart like me? Tell stories, and yet so far the support for it's been very good. We should hit the market here pretty quick, probably next 60 days.
Oh, congratulations on that too.
Yeah,
absolutely
amazing.
It's fun, but it took a lot of, quite frankly, coercion from the family to get me to do it. I got this going on, I got that going on, I don't have time. Well, yes, you do. You have time to do it. It's just a matter of, it's a matter of making the time and prioritizing things. And I think successful people do that more so than others. To your point earlier, that lane that's so comfortable, only goes one direction, right? And to get out of that lane, you're going to have to turn the steering wheel at least a quarter of a turn, so your tire tracks go someplace else.
Stan, I got a burning question. I visualize you as an outdoorsman, out there surviving Arctic type temperatures, maybe trekking through a few feet of snow, being charged by a bear, like this epic, and it's not like you're outdoorsing in like Virginia. It's the wild, wild west. And I'm just curious for you, what kind of impact or maybe epiphanies that you've been able to have because you do go out there and adventure. Have there been things that you wouldn't operate in your business, maybe ways you wouldn't operate if it weren't for your experience being out there, maybe things you've encountered that made you think differently about business? I'm curious the crossover maybe of what you borrow from those experiences and that you bring back into the business world that maybe not everybody else has had a chance to do.
Well, aside from adventure, I'm not sure there is any, Andy. When I'm out there, I try and forget the business. That's part of the being out there. It's the experience of communing with nature, and that's my time. And sometimes a guy just needs to have clarity breaks. Well, clarity breaks for business are one thing, but clarity breaks on life or for your life are necessary, I think, and that's my release. So I really don't do a lot of business thinking when I'm out in the field. Now, that being said, I will tell you, I don't adventure out in the snow either. The hunting season in Alaska is in September, so it's fall and it's cold, but generally there's no snow. It's unless you go up high in different places, but it's an unforgiving country. I mean, you can be miles away because most of our trips are fly-in where you get dropped off and, you're just out there, right, with whatever you took with you. And we have had one experience that's also in the book about being away from camp and, quite frankly, spending the night out because we got lost. Yep. And that's an interesting experience.
I can imagine.
It's the only time ever I've been lost in the woods, and it happened at a time when I didn't follow my dad's advice. We had just gotten off a plane, didn't have our hunting gear actually on yet, so I had no lighter, no toilet paper, just had my rifle and the clothes that we flew out there in, jeans and hip boots, light coat. And we ended up spending the night underneath the spruce trees out of the rain, or trying to stay out of the rain. And there's a chapter in the book on that with a poem that I wrote afterwards. It's pretty. That's an eye-opening experience.
Oh yeah, and it's in those moments you want to make sure you don't got one of those big guys behind you creeping up there.
Yeah, well, and yeah, that's always a concern, right? That's why never without a rifle. But this guy here is. I've been involved in the execution of 3 of those things, 2 of which were charging at the time. This one was not. It was a spot and stalk hunt. But when they're charging, that's a whole different level of OG.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you got to have a certain set of calmness about you to navigate that situation. Sure.
Yeah, training takes over, and you just kind of go ice cold, and things slow down, and. Yeah. It's after it's over that your knees start to shake, you start to sweat, you start to giggle like a little girl, because it's an amazing feeling. Not necessarily a good one, but it is amazing. Yeah, we had the one that charged my son and I. He was 13 at the time, and he dropped at about 25 paces away. The other one was my buddy and I. We were on a gut pile, expecting a bear to come in. Figured he'd stop and eat again. He didn't. As soon as he saw us, he turned, jumped right over the gut pile, and came right at us. And that one stopped at 20 paces.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's very similar advice if you feel like, I guess metaphorically speaking, you got a grizzly bear, in your business, in your agency, like you got uncertainty happening, commission cuts, TCPA changes, all these different things. I think it's real easy to fall into the panic mode, right? But I think, what you said there was you had to slow down, very methodical, and think. And I think, a lot of times when we're in those places like so many are today in their businesses, it's like, taking a step back, getting yourself out of it. Maybe it's coming out of the office and just trying to get clarity, slowing down a little bit, and then coming in from a different place, a strategic place, unemotional place, and being very, tactical, I guess, on how you're gonna pivot in your business model to keep up with the, ever evolving changes.
Well, I think that's perfect. Yeah, because yes, tactical is one thing. Like I mentioned earlier about scorecards, numbers really are not emotional. We get emotional about them,
Yep.
but the numbers themselves carry no emotion. So
Mhm.
how do we get tactical about, to concentrate on the things that matter most and the things that we can control? Because the stuff that we can't control, we tend to get emotional about,
Yep.
and we tend to spout off about as owners and leaders and that sort of thing. But when we do that, it affects our team too. So we've got to make sure that what comes out of our mouth isn't affecting our team. And so going back to being tactical as opposed to emotional about some of these changes, what can we change? What can we not change? Let's concentrate on the things within the business that we can change that drive us forward, given this new set of circumstances.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. And I guess, another thing I'd like to get into too, because one of the things we're always, looking to do here for business owners on the call is just try to make life better, right? And I think the whole purpose of entrepreneurship at the end of the day is living a better life and getting to that level where you have freedom, right? And that always doesn't happen in the beginning. But when I look at somebody like, and that didn't happen in the beginning for me, but now I'm blessed to have that. And I know that didn't happen in the beginning for you. And you're blessed to have that where you're traveling around, you're going to masterminds, running different businesses, being a coach. What was that tipping point or defining moment that caused you to do things differently? And then what did that progression path look like to, structure your current business operation today that enabled you to have the freedom that you once didn't have?
Well, I think my path might be different than some. I was hired as an employee agent that worked in a store at a booth, right?
Yep.
And then I was forced into becoming a business person. That was not originally the plan. I was, the model changed after I was hired, and they kicked you out and said, okay, fine, go be a business person. I looked around and saw what the competition was doing, and I opened my own office. Other agents were going out in 2s and 3s, and I said, I'm gonna be my own agent. So I borrowed $5,000 and opened this first single agent office in the state of Alaska. And I grew a lot faster because of that. But I still worked the grind a lot up until probably 10 years ago or so. So I was 30 years into it before I realized maybe that I have a business or that I own a business and I should
Yep.
take a different role and groom other people to do what I was doing and become the actual owner. There's that phrase, work on your business rather than in your business. Well, you have to do both actually.
Yep.
But that was probably the tipping point you're talking about, that, okay, it's okay for me not to answer every phone call.
Yep.
It's okay for me to have my staff do it and trusting them to do it the way I've taught them. And then I can do other things that my talents really, really are centered on and focused on. And that was that lane too, right? And the easiest thing, even today, Dave, sometimes I will tell you, the easiest thing for me to do is jump on the phone and start answering it and talk to clients.
Oh yeah.
I love it, right? I mean, they love it. We've developed relationships over the last 40 years. A lot of them been with me for 39 of those 40 years. And so it's simple for me to do that.
Yep.
What's difficult is to expand my horizons now into an area of interest or to pursue a different path, to engage people in a different way. Doing this podcast is a step outside of my normal comfort zone. And,
Yep.
I'm trying to do more of that to generate, better,
Well, hey, for
well-rounded.
being outside your comfort zone, you're killing
Yeah.
it. You're adding a lot of value to everybody
Well,
today. So.
Well, thanks. It's just talking has not really been an issue. I think talking on camera maybe is.
Yeah.
You have the best
Usually
backdrop of all time. So, I mean, you came in and already set a very high bar.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's my shop, and I apologize for that. We just recently moved, so my office isn't
Good.
set
I
up.
like the grizzly bear background. I'm digging it.
There's mounts laying all over the floor back behind him. So until I get a place where I can hang them, that's where they're going to be, I guess.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, and I mean, I think those, it goes back to what you're saying earlier too. It's like getting in the right rooms around the right people. If you want to do things differently, and you want to maybe go from being the one that's working in your business rather than on it. Well, who else around you? What events can you go to? Masterminds can you go to? Local people that are doing things differently, so you can learn a thing or two about a thing or two. I know for me, I started to recognize every time I went to the next level in life, it was always like a who moment. I learned from somebody else. I had a mentor enter my life. I had, somebody that, profoundly impacted me. And then I think once that shift took place and I realized that, hey, you know what? I can intentionally create my own who moments by searching for these people rather it being a random act of encounter, right? And I started going to conferences, and I remember to this day, I went to a 10X conference. I know you're a big 10X guy, and that was kind of where I started my my self-development journey as well, picking up Grant Cardone book, going to a 10X conference. And I remember getting on and watching JJ Watts on one of the first 10X conferences. And I was in a place in my business where it wasn't scaling. I was working in the business. And, he said something profound. He was running the number 1 through 7 Honda dealerships in the entire country. And I thought that's pretty incredible. He's in charge of 7 Honda dealerships, and out of the hundreds or thousands of Honda dealerships, however many are in the country, he happened to rank number 1 through 7, all his operations. So he had to be doing something differently. He attributed it to, having non-negotiables and non-compromising culture. And then when I really reflected on it, realized that there was a lot of people that maybe were good individual performers that weren't good team performers and weren't in alignment where my culture was. And I never really articulated my vision. Hey, my name's on the door. And a lot of times I'm allowing people to act in misalignment with, hey, Dave Williams' name on the door. And if I had a perfect operation, what would it look like? What's the energy I want to walk into? What's the operation I want to walk into? So we cast that vision, got with the team, set different expectations, said, hey, we're not going to get rid of you tomorrow, but this is the why behind why we got to do it and operate differently. Mm-hmm. But we need positive mental attitude. We need everybody to act with integrity. We need everybody to show up. And, came up with these non-negotiables and core values. And the end result of that is we ended up having to let go after multiple warnings, some of our top performers. But what's interesting about it, and you probably encountered the same thing, it was like the top performer that behaviorally wasn't a cultural alignment. Yes, we lost that individual production, but now with a much smaller team, the collective production grew. So we were actually doing more with less by doing the right thing there. And, that was a pretty profound thing to me. And then from then I just became obsessed from learning from other successful people that are out there. Cause they're all willing to help. They are willing to share the keys and to the kingdom. And all you got to do, one simple thing, ask for help.
Ask for help. Yeah. It's funny. You get what you tolerate, right? And so in those core value to conversations and stuff, it's because you've allowed it. And I've been guilty of the same thing. I've allowed it and had to change some things because of it. The Road Less Stupid, book by Keith Cunningham, addresses that really well, and how to apologize, because you're going to make this grandiose sweeping change by introducing core values now, and you're going to be operating by core values. You're going to be hiring and firing by core values, and the people that are in your business are going to have to either suck it up or they're going to have to step off the bus, right? And he has a great chapter in there dedicated to that conversation, how you present that in the form of an apology. You've allowed it up until now, but going forward, this is the way it's going to be, and here's why, and talks a bit in depth about the core value conversation. And it's just really good. If you haven't read it, pick it up.
I want to share something real quick. During a few years when I worked, with Grant, being there for about 3.5 years as a producer for him, there was a pivotal moment where he made some big changes and was basically like, you're either on board or you're not, and we're going to figure that out real quick. Mm-hmm. But there was something very, it built a lot of confidence the way he presented it. And it was essentially like, this ship that I've built is not going to sink. Like, we're getting to the island and I am going there. And if you guys want to jump off, like, you're free to jump off. But if you're staying here, like, we're going to win and we're going to get there. And I think for those that were committed, that was like, dang, I got to make some changes. This might be tough. But at the same time, like, this guy is so over the top confident that we're going to get there that I'm just going to ride with him. And for a lot of us, that's why we were like, okay, like, whatever you say is next for us, we're good with that, because you're instilling like confidence in us, because you're empowering us and showing us like, my vision is not going to fail and we will get where we're going. It might not be what you expected in the first place. But kind of goes in line with what you're saying, Stan, about like do it with compassion, do it in a way that connects with people instead of just this very stale, like sign this sheet of paper, because that's not going to go very far.
No, absolutely. And I think there's something to be said about too, like when you're in your own operation, hey, yeah, there's the core values, you can cast the vision, but I think it's like you then leading from the front every single day. You're leading those core values, you're leading that vision, never deviating, because there's something to be said about people will do as you do before they do as you say. And I think it comes all the way down to understanding even your own weaknesses and then embracing them. It's because there's a lot of things at the end of the day that are undesirable to do. For example, you got that person that came from the service side that never really leaned into sales. So they keep perpetually trying to hire salespeople, but they've never dove into the role to gain the competence and the confidence themselves, or vice versa. It could be leadership, whatever the topic may be, understanding those weaknesses. And then, realizing that by having those weaknesses and not leaning in, it's going to keep you in a position of pain longer than not. So a best practice I always like to do anytime I'm in a company, starting a company, whatever it might be, I have to become a master of that role. And it's up to me to determine how long I live into that role to build the confidence, the competence, and get somebody at least 60% of the speed that I am. So we did that at Team Hired. I had to be my own best salesperson because it was a new business. We had to figure it out, right? And that taught me the barometer, though, of how to lead like a leader. I know how hot is high. I know what's attainable. I know what the close rate should be, the number of conversations it is. And you can get a gauge of that barometer and experience. But through that experience, you can be so much more of an effective leader. But when you think about it, when you don't do something like that and you never lived into the role that you're expecting somebody to live into, it's like, how do you lead it? It's almost like you're doing it half blind or completely blindfolded because you don't know those nuances. So I like to go around every role into the company until I could become competent enough so I can lead it, get somebody alongside me that I can get up to 60% of me, because I know nobody else is the owner and they're not going to get to my level. But if I can get somebody 60% of my level, I can build these cement or steel pillars inside of our operation around every important core area. And now those are the people that then take on the responsibilities that I had that I didn't desire to take on before. So sometimes it's taking a step back, rolling up your sleeve, doing the dirty work until you can become competent enough to get somebody in there, trained up, clone yourself a little bit, and then you can take the step back and then truly become the CEO. But I think a lot of people got this like misconceived notion that, hey, I'm an entrepreneur now, and now I'm the CEO and I don't got to do the tough stuff anymore.
Yeah, we see that a lot, and it's unfortunate, and that's one of the reasons why 3 out of 5 businesses fail in the first 5 years is exactly that. Oh well, I own. Well, that's great. Well, sometimes you have to wear multiple hats when you first start out, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The owner, the revenue officer, the salesperson, the janitor. Certainly at times, and you have to be willing to do that to get beyond that step. And by the way, Dave, I don't know of anybody as fast as you. So, but,
oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's all over time though, right? It's like, a lot of rolling up your sleeve and doing it, and it gives you that different skill set. And then I think it gets you through the tough times, and I think learning to enjoy like the tough times in business early on, like if you can enjoy that, and then it's the later years in business, like, hey, you and I are in, and then it's like, man, it's like life is good. And, we're in a place to be in the greatest country on earth, and the greatest thing that we're blessed to be able to do, to be entrepreneurs in America. And it's, I think the insurance business is, it's probably one of the greatest business opportunities that are out there. And, this has been an absolute incredible call. I think there's been, just a ton of golden nuggets the audience has been listening to today. And as we're kind of, winding down to the end here, first off, everybody make sure, if you're watching live or you're watching the rerun, make sure to give Stan here a lot of love, because he's been giving you love today, volunteering his time and just giving so much wisdom of somebody that's been so successful for so many years into the business. One of the questions I really like to ask at the end of the call is a couple questions. I'll start with one, and then we'll go into the next. If you had one thing to leave everybody with here today, that was like the very one kind of nugget that you feel that could be the most impactful in their businesses, in their operations, I guess, what would that one thing be from that lens?
Speaking from experience and making the mistake, I would say never quit learning. I got to a point where I was jaded. I'd won pretty much everything the company had to offer, and I got a bit cynical. And don't do the Stan thing, right? don't quit learning. Never stop expanding your horizons, because if you do that, you end up being a bitter old guy that isn't or gal that's not very happy to be around. And fortunately, I was slapped in the face at a time where I needed it, and made a change. It would just be a whole lot easier if you didn't go down the road at all and have to make that change.
No, I love that. And I guess the final question would be to you, if you could, hey, you know what, every one of us on this call is going to turn to dust at some point. And when it comes to legacy, there's one thing, and it could be anything, it could be biz related, it could be unbusiness related, but one thing that you want to leave into this world that's an everlasting impression that could create a ripple effect that would leave lives better off. What's the one thing that Stan Tebow wants to leave a legacy after Stan Tebow leaves this world?
Well, that's kind of a trick question. You didn't prepare me for that one. I suppose probably just love of mankind.
Love that.
I absolutely love people, and I want to see everybody win. I really do. And so the continued education that I do and teaching I help people with and that sort of thing is all about helping other people win.
No, I absolutely love that. And I think people underestimate the power they have as one individual, because if you can, I like to break down the math this way. A mentor of mine does, David Meltzer. And he says, as an individual, if you wanted to reach 1 billion people, thinking about that, like, that's a pretty daunting task. How would I ever do that? But what if you're trying to reach 1,000 people? That's attainable, right? But if I could reach 1,000 people and go a little bit deeper and empower them to reach 1,000 people, and then teach them to reach 1,000 people, well, that's 1 billion people. And I think that's the profound ripple effect that we all have the capability of doing. And, the one thing that's been the key to my success, and I know it's been the key to your success, and I know, Andy, you're a proponent of this too, so we're all in good company with one another, is the more people you leave better off, and the more people you serve, and the more people you help get to their destination in life, that you truly don't have to worry about yourself. And adopting that mentality, I had to stop worrying about myself a long time ago, because things just seem to click, and God just seems to put things together for me when I'm helping other people get to where they want to go. And I think servitude is one of the best things that we all can do in this world. So that's why I absolutely love what you said, because that's 100% in alignment with my belief systems. And man, just thank you again. It's been an incredible call having you on here. And I'd be remiss. I want to give you an opportunity. How do people buy your book to support you? How do people work with you as a coach? And, where can they follow Stan Tebow?
You can reach me at stan.tebow@gmail.com. It's pretty simple for the book issue. As far as coaching and that sort of thing, same way. You can contact me there. You can also reach me at stan@nextlevelconsultingus.com. Happens to be my wife's company. I just tag along, do sales training there.
Duo of champions there.
I'll plug that in the comments for everybody in the live and the restream as well, Stan.
Cool. Thanks so much. It's been fun.
No, it's been a blast, and you crushed it. So great job. And it's just been an incredible episode. So thank you, everybody that's tuning in, whether you are watching this live or you're watching it on a rerun. Make sure to take great notes, because it's guys like this that I had to learn from earlier in my career, that if I had not, I wouldn't have gotten to the places that I'm blessed to be today. And that can be you too. I truly believe that anybody has a vision for what their life's going to look like. You can make that vision become a reality, but it takes being around great people like Stan to do it. So thank you for listening in today. Make sure, again, show Stan some love, whether you're live or on the rerun. And thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Ask the Experts. And until next week, we will see you soon.